going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at ImacSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. And keep an eye on that YouTube. Turn the noties on because we're going to be working on stuff in the future. But today it's episode 201 on a Monday. Kyle's going on vacation. So we're doing this right before college football drops. And there's some pretty cool stuff going on here. MLB Draft currently going on. So if anything cool happens, I'm sure Kyle's got live updates for us today.
Yeah, I've got the draft pulled up right now. Looking at pick by pick, just seeing the stuff that's going on. If there's a recognizable name or something along those lines, we'll definitely keep you posted there. And then we got, the big one. College football 25 dropping in about less than an hour now, 56 minutes to be exact. And the clock is ticking. So we're doing the episode early this week and getting it out there and ready for you guys so we can game tomorrow pretty much. But getting into our opener that we do every episode, I'm going to talk about Spain winning the Euros yesterday. They were playing England. Exciting game to start off. There wasn't a single goal in the first half, one in the second half. And immediately got started with the Nico Williams goal, who just turned 22 years old in the 47th minute. And it felt like it was going to be Spain's game to run away with until England scored a goal in the 73rd minute by Cole Palmer. I know Alex was pumped up for that. But then seemingly out of nowhere in the 86th minute, felt like the game was going to overtime. Mikel, I always mess up his name, Oyarzabal, scored and sent Spain to the not the championship. They're already in the championship. To win the Euros, their fourth time that they've done that, I believe. But just good for Spain to beat England. And as a Spaniard, definitely means something there.
Yeah. Last week we talked about how our good friend Brent Rooker should be playing for the American League All-Star team on Tuesday nights. So he made a big statement against the Phillies over the weekend, taking his anger out with 10 hits, 3 moonshots, and a 1.6 OPS. It was beautiful. They were some of the farthest balls that he's hit in his career.
Yeah, he was cooking. Speaking about players that were cooking, we're getting into our player, pitcher, rookie of the week now. Let's go. Who's your player of the week?
I did just talk about Brent Rooker. It's serious consideration, obviously, probably the most feared hitter of the week. But one man had a week that will probably never be repeated again. That's the Cincinnati rookie, Rhys Hines, who had 11 hits, 8 of which were extra base hits in his first week as a big leaguer. 5 homers.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. You got to choose Rhys Hines for his 5 homer, 11 RBI, triple, 3 doubles, 2 stolen bases. He did it all for the Cincinnati Reds. And I thought it was pretty funny looking at when he got called up by the Reds, some of the initial reaction from those Reds fans that kind of know what's going on in the minor leagues is like, oh, get ready for this guy to swing and miss a ton. Because he's kind of been a bust of a prospect over the past year or so. But immediately came up and, started hitting the crap out of the ball. Maybe he fills out into an Aristides Aquino type dude. I've seen a lot of comps with that, considering Reds, big guy, big outfielder. But, start your career like that is pretty special. Also got to give a shout out to Lawrence Butler because he went 8 for 22 and hit 5 homers as well over this past week with a 3-homer game just yesterday. 2 stolen bases too. How about pitcher of the week?
Paul Skeens does it again, man. 7 no-hit innings in Milwaukee with 11 strikeouts. He probably would have gotten his first no-hitter, but I get it, man. I get it. You got to be careful when you have such a valuable piece like Paul Skeens.
Yeah, Paul Skeens is also my pitcher of the week without a doubt. 7 innings, no hit, like you said, 11 strikeouts, 1 walk. He was really, really dominant, especially in those last 3 or 4 innings. In that outing, I believe he ended with under 100 pitches too. I expected him to go back out for the 8th at least, but I guess they didn't want him to do that. And ended up bringing in Colin Holderman, and he gave up a hit on the second pitch that he threw. So the no-hitter was gone just like that. Rookie of the week, though, Skyler. This is a tough one.
Yeah, maybe this is a cop-out. I went with co-winners, Rhys Hines and Paul Skeens, the 2 guys with the 2 awards. I just couldn't decide because it feels like neither of these things are going to be repeated for a very long time from rookies.
Yeah, I did a tie as well too. I didn't think there was enough to go any sort of way on these two dudes, but I also had Butler in there as well too for his crazy week. So three-way tie with Skeens, Hines, and Lawrence Butler. On to our top 15 power rankings that we do bi-weekly. And we'll start it off with any teams that did not make the list that were on the list last time that you want to talk about.
Yeah, Tampa Bay will be dropping out. They were 15 and were average, so sucks for them.
St. Louis is the only team for me that fell out. They didn't really have a bad week, but just I see these other teams starting to pass them up a little bit when I trust how good some of these other teams are in comparison to the Cardinals. Number 15.
There were a lot of teams I left off who are streaking right now, but I'm still going to keep the Padres in the top half. They're only falling from 8 to 15. Still, though, that's a lot of spots. I thought San Diego would be a sneaky over this season on the wins, but they never really slowed down until now. Now it seems like Machado, Profar, Merrill are the only guys on the entire team with positive WAR this month.
Number 15 for me is going to be the only unranked team that I have from this past time that we did our rankings, and it's the Arizona Cardinals, not the Arizona Cardinals. I was just thinking St. Louis Cardinals, Arizona Diamondbacks. NL champs last year, starting to play a bit better. Series wins over the Dodgers, Padres, Toronto, and split 4 with the oh my gosh, the Atlanta Braves. Now right over 500 at 49 and 48. I trust this team a lot more than the Cardinals. I like the pitching more, and I like the lineup more as well, too, and that's why they get the bump over the team in the Midwest. Number 14.
At number 14, the Metropolitans will be ranked for the first time all season for me. I didn't even have them as an honorable mention for a long time because I just assumed they'd be selling at the deadline, but here they go. They're on a little 7-3 stretch into the break and hold a wild card spot.
Number 14 for me is going to be where I slot the Kansas City Royals, moving down 2 spots from my last rankings. 54 or 52 and 45, but they did not have a good last 2 weeks. They got swept in a small 2-game series against St. Louis. They lost series to Tampa Bay, Colorado, and Boston. This lineup's fizzling out, man. I see Bobby Witt, he's great. I see Salvador Perez, he's great. I see Pascal Quintino, he's solid. But everybody besides that, you just really can't rely on. And if you only have 3 guys that can get it done for you in the lineup, you're not going to be there in October, regardless of how good your starting staff or your back end of the bullpen is. Number 13.
At number 13, I actually do have the Cardinals going up a spot. However, this team is still very confusing. They were 8-6 over the last 2 weeks, but hit 281 as a team. That's good for second best. And they're still 4 games over 500. I guess I can't quit on them yet.
Mm-hmm. Number 13 for me is the Mets. They move up 2 spots from my last rankings where I had them at 15. If it's based off of vibes, this team could be number 1 right now. They're so fun to watch. They got series wins over Colorado. They won 5 out of 7 in between 2 series with the Washington Nationals, then split a 4-game series with the Pittsburgh Pirates within that 2-week stretch. Now sitting at 49 and 46. Everything's clicking for this team right now, whether it's the bats, whether it's the pitching, whether it's the bullpen. Especially their lineup, like 1 through 9, these guys are hitting, and it's a fun lineup to watch right now. And I think not having a crazy superstar or something like that, even with a guy like Lindor and Alonso on your squad, it's just making this team so much more fun to watch. On to number 12.
Number 12, I got the Mariners only dropping 1 spot, but that doesn't fully express my disappointment towards their lineup. It's the amazing rotation that keeps them from spiraling here. But they're pretty much doing what they've been doing all season.
Yeah. The Padres are my number 12 team. They moved down 2 spots from my last rankings. 50 and 49 the last 2 weeks consisted of getting series win over Texas, a series loss to Arizona and Atlanta, and then swept in a 2-game series versus Seattle. I keep on waiting for this team to go on a stretch where they win 10 in a row or 9 out of 10 and kind of just put themselves above all these other teams in the wild card race except for the Braves, and they just haven't done it. And it's looking, scarier and scarier the further you go. The offense just wasn't there this past 2 weeks, even with all the guys that they have in that lineup. So San Diego moves down 2 spots to number 12. Number 11.
Number 11, I got the Royals actually going up a spot. passing the Mariners. We've been worried about the bats, but they've been hitting really well this month. So 260, that's above league average. That's way above Seattle. So I'm going to bump them up.
Number 11 for me is going to be where I slot the Seattle Mariners, moving down 3 spots from when I had them at number 8 in my last rankings, 52-46, and it was a rough couple of weeks. Their only series win was a small 2-game sweep over the Padres, like I just mentioned, but they lost series to Baltimore, Toronto, and then lost 3 out of 4 to the Angels over this past weekend. This lineup is the worst lineup out of any team in the top 15. They're just lucky that they have a generational starting rotation and a good bullpen as well, too. Number 10.
At 10, I got the Astros sticking pat here. I completely forgot I had them in the top 10 when I was taking my notes last night, but here we go. 2 weeks of 9-5 ball. That keeps them above Seattle in the power rankings, and they've been doing it with the pitching now, surprisingly, too, even though they had some question marks.
Number 10 for me is going to be where I slot the Boston Red Sox, moving up 3 spots from my last rankings when I had them at 13. 53-42 gives them a wild card spot right now. They had series wins over the Yankees, Oakland, Kansas City, and also swept Miami. So they didn't lose a single series within the past 2 weeks, and they've been getting hits through 1 through 9 in their lineup like they have all year, and they're starting to get some more better starts from guys outside of Tanner Houck, who's been carrying that rotation all year long. I know at the beginning of the year they were really, really good 1 through 5. Had a bit of a slow down stretch there, but now it's starting to pick back up where they're getting a quality start close to every single night. Number 9.
Last time, I also had the Red Sox at 13. They will now be at number 9, 1 spot above you, back in the top 10 thanks to an MLB best 10-3 record over the stretch. And it has been everybody, but specifically Rafi Devers back over a 1.0 OPS this month. And of course, the pitching's been great for most of the season.
Yeah. Number 9 is going to be where I put the Houston Astros, up 2 spots from my last rankings. We waited and waited on them. Now they finally look like they're the team that they've been the past 7 to 10 years. 50-46 isn't the greatest record, but over the past 2 weeks, swept Miami, series went over Toronto, and the last 2 close series versus Minnesota and Texas. This lineup's good. I think they're going to be aggressive at the deadline. The rotation's getting better and healthier as we go on. They're going to be in the thick of it once it's all said and done. Number 8.
Number 8, I got the Twins going up 1 spot. Another team that has finally found it. They're finally consistent again, 8-5 down the stretch. And it seems like Blake Snell's the only guy that has been able to slow this offense down if Correa's foot doesn't do it for him first.
Yeah, for real. Number 8 for me is also going to be the Minnesota Twins, except for me, they're moving down 1 spot, 54-42. Still, like you said, a good couple of weeks, 8-5. Series wins over Detroit, Houston, and Chicago. With the series loss at the Giants to round out there, but like you said, Correa getting hurt and Blake Snell shoving. I like this team. When they're healthy, I think they're one of the best teams in the American League. It's just that's really the only question if they can stay healthy because they have the bullpen, they have the rotation, they have the lineup, they have the defense. They just got to stay healthy. Number 7.
Number 7, the Brewers will be staying put here. It's Yelich. It's the youngsters. They're still killing it at 55 wins. Everything looks really good on paper, contact and the pitching factory especially, but I'm not sure I would trust them in the postseason yet, so I'm not going to move them up.
The Brewers had a weird couple of weeks. I did move them down 1 spot, but they are also my number 7 team. 54-42, still a good record, or 55-42. But they had no series wins over the last 2 weeks. Series lost to Colorado, Dodgers, Philadelphia, and Washington. So a decently tough schedule in there. But if you're going to compete at the postseason, you got to play against those good teams as well, too. And if they're going to the playoffs right now, I don't think they'd be in a good spot, which is, good for them considering that the playoffs isn't right now. It's in 3 months. So they got a while to get better. Number 6.
I feel like I've had the Braves at 6 for about 2 months now because it hasn't been pretty, but they hit a ton of home runs and they win their series. 6-4 over their last 10. It's not the prettiest, but they've been getting the job done. And also Reynaldo Lopez is back. So another pitcher for you.
Yeah, Atlanta was in my 6th spot a couple months ago. They've been fizzling out a little bit for me with the injuries and all this other underperforming stuff going on. They now finally go back up to that 6th spot, going up 3 spots from my last rankings, 53-42. Series wins over Philadelphia and San Diego. Split a 4-gamer with the Arizona Diamondbacks and lost a series to the Giants, I believe, right at the beginning of that 2-week stretch. Regardless, this team looks good right now. They're very Atlanta Braves, 1 through 9, 1 through 8, whatever it is. They're getting production from those guys. And that's helping them, survive a shitty season from Matt Olson or an underwhelming season from an Austin Riley or Ozzie Albies. Number 5.
Number 5, the Guardians, also pretty consistently at the 5 spot. Other than losing a bunch of games to Detroit, they haven't been bad in a while. The bats have started to go a little cold, unfortunately, but this may be a Detroit thing. But because of that, I'm going to keep them under the AL East teams here at number 5.
Number 5 for me is going to be up at the Dodgers, sticking at the same spot that I've had them at for a while now. 56-41, they had series wins over Milwaukee, but they lost series to the Arizona Diamondbacks and Detroit Tigers, and also got swept by the Phillies this past week as well, too. I won't say they're limping because they're still finding ways to get wins, but the injury, especially with Mookie Betts and their starting rotation, it's getting tough, man. Dustin May's got a torn esophagus. Like that. I mean, he wasn't playing anyways, but that's pretty ridiculous to hear about. And I'm sure they'll be making the playoffs. I'm sure they'll win the division, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to be a year to win the World Series if they don't have all these guys healthy, or most of them healthy at the end of the year. Number 4.
Number 4, I got the Yankees also staying put here. They played pretty well against Baltimore, but I feel like they're starting to lose their mojo. Thanks to Clay Holmes, Verdugo, and Volpe last week specifically. That was such a brutal ending, man. But I decided to keep them behind Baltimore right now, heading into the break. I am more excited to see what Baltimore has for us in the second half.
I also have the Yankees as my number 4 spot, standing pat from where we had in my last rankings, 58-40 as we speak. Series win over Baltimore, so it is kind of weird to have them below. I just really don't think the Yankees are that good right now. They also lost series to the Boston Red Sox, Tampa Bay, and got swept by Cincinnati. They just don't look good. And I know, they won a series in Baltimore, but that was probably the worst series of the year for Baltimore. And I think I have a bit more confidence in them bouncing back than this Yankees team that hasn't had any production from anyone besides Soto and Judge and sometimes Ben Rice in 2 months, at this point. Number 3.
I couldn't move up Baltimore. The Yankees and O's both went 5-8. So the Orioles are going to stay at 3. They did win a pretty big series in Seattle. So they're not going down. They're not dropping anywhere. But it's all about the second half for these guys. Can they keep it going?
Yeah. My number 3 team is going to be the Baltimore Orioles. I had them at 1 my last 2 rankings. They moved down to 3 here, so down 2 spots. 58-38 is still the second best record within the AL. 2 weeks ago, series wins over Seattle and Oakland. Felt good. This past week was probably their worst week of the season, though. Got swept by the Cubs at home and lost 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, and very easily could have been swept in that series if it wasn't for the Volpe, Verdugo, Clay Holmes disastery. They had a stretch this past week where they scored 4 runs in 5 games. That's never something I thought I'd see with this Baltimore Orioles team. However, I think they are going to bounce back very well after the All-Star break, and I think they are willing to make some bigger moves at the trade deadline as well, too, this year. Number 2.
Number 2, the Dodgers will finally drop down from the 1 spot. You described it pretty well. This has been such a rough stretch, dealing with so many injuries. It's finally hitting them. The injuries don't even seem real. Dustin May is dealing with a ridiculous injury we didn't think was going to be part of this at all. But 3-7 over their last 10. They just lost a series to Detroit. But I still feel like the sky is the limit for this team, just like Baltimore. So I have them right next to each other. I didn't drop them down to 5 yet.
Yeah. Number 2 is going to be where I slot the Cleveland Guardians, moving up 1 spot from my last rankings. The best record in the AL at 58-37. It wasn't the greatest couple of week stretch. They had series wins over Chicago and the Giants, but also lost series to Detroit and Tampa Bay. I just think as of right now, this team's the most complete, especially over the last a couple of months. I think, especially in the AL, like 1 through 9 getting production. Whoever's on the starting mound is getting production there. We know their bullpen's really good, and they have the best closer in the league right now in Emmanuel Clase, statistically speaking, that is. I mean, they could just throw whoever out there, and they're going to hit, whether it's Daniel Schneemann, whether it's Joaquin Noel, whether it's Angel Martinez. Like, everybody's hitting for them. And maybe that's a Steven Vogt thing. I don't know how it's happening, but I got to feel very confident if I'm a Guardians fan right now about my team. And then number 1.
Yeah, Phillies finally get it for me. It's about damn time, right? But 8-5 over the last 2 weeks, much better than the other blue chip teams have been over this month and even longer. And they deserve it. I'm convinced. They swept the Dodgers, so they are the team with the target on their back right now.
Yeah, the Phillies, number 1 team, moving up 1 ranking or 1 spot from our last rankings. 62-34 is easily the best record in baseball right now, like you said. Swept the Dodgers, got a series win over the Cubs. Lost series to Atlanta and the A's, oddly enough. But this team feels like the best team in baseball right now. They're starting to get healthy again. Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. Hopefully Zach Wheeler doesn't have a long-term injury there with, I want to say, back pain or something like that, because they need him. I assume they're going to be aggressive at the deadline as well, too, addressing whatever need that they have on their targets there. And Philadelphia Phillies, best team in baseball right now.
Yeah.
Moving on, we got to talk about the first round of the MLB Draft. We're not going to go over all 39 first-round picks, considering the competitive balance picks and whatnot. But we are going to do the top 10 for grades, and then we're going to look a little bit outside of the top 10 as well, too, and talk about some of our favorite picks there as well. So we can go ahead and get it started from number 1, grade in our picks, with the Cleveland Guardians taking Travis Pizzana. Best record in the AL and the number 1 overall picks. Pretty ridiculous. What do you think about this pick and taking the second baseman from Australia?
I'm going to give it an A. There were some conspiracies floating around there about the number 1 pick, but at the end of the day, I think this is the right guy because Bazan is going to be a perfect fit in Cleveland. If he turns out to be the perfect version of himself, the modern 1 or 2 hitter. Great approach, great contact, but just as good with the exit velos.
Yeah, I like Bazana a ton. I think he's been the best player in the draft for a long time. I give it an A+. This is perfect pick for them. This guy, I think his swing plays really well to that ballpark as well, too, especially since they opened up the back end and let the wind go through. I saw some video about that where they changed up their stadium a little bit and it's helping the balls fly a little bit easier. I think his swing projects perfectly for that. Whether he plays second base long-term, I'm really not too sure. Maybe he goes to the corner outfield spot or maybe even center if they really feel good about his defense. Potentially maybe a D. I don't know where they slot him defensively long-term because they have some spots already taken. But I like this pick a ton. I think you draft the bat and you're okay. You worry about the defense later. Number 2, the Cincinnati Reds make a bit of a shocking pick here, taking Chase Burns, the starting pitcher out of Wake Forest.
So this will be the lowest grade I have in the top 10, even though I love the prospect. I get the appeal. He's a flamethrower. The thing is, though, Chase Burns reminds me way more of Trevor Bauer than he does of a Jacob deGrom that I've been seeing on ESPN. And, hey, this is a really risky one because if Charlie Condon ends up being anything close to his potential, they're going to regret it so hard. That's why. It's not necessarily they made this big mistake. It's, hey, I think Charlie Condon and Jack Caglione are better players, man.
Yeah. I don't dislike this pick. I think we were talking about Chase Burns prior to the draft, and we gave Hunter Green as a comp for him. And, Cincinnati Reds fell in love with Hunter Green. If they see a guy just like that, I'm pretty sure they're going to fall right in love with that guy. And they did. And Chase Burns, very electric arm, very expressive personality. Is it the right pick? Probably not. I think Condon's probably the better player. But if you fall in love with a guy like the Cincinnati Reds did with Chase Burns, you got to stick with your gut. And that's what they did. So I give it a B+. I think it's a solid player, solid prospect, solid pick. Just maybe not the best pick you could have made in that spot. Number 3, if there's ever been a player to match his ballpark in MLB draft history, it's this guy right here. Charlie Condon, the slugger from Georgia, goes to the Colorado Rockies.
I was going to say, if you think Bazana, the Aussie, his swing was perfect for that park. Charlie Condon hitting in Coors Field is going to be a beauty. It's an A+ slam dunk. This also allowed them to take Brody Brecht at 38, a flame-throwing righty from Iowa with a 70 grade slider. So just a perfect situation for them. You don't want to take the pitcher this high in Colorado.
Yeah, I like this pick a ton. I think this is, Condon's going to be great in Colorado. I just don't think it was the pick I would have taken. I think maybe they had Burns one as their ideal, or not ideal, but who they figured was going to be left to them. I think they figured Bazana and Condon was going to go 1 and 2. As soon as he wasn't, they just snatched him up at number 3. However, I do kind of wish they went with the pitcher here in Hagen Smith because I like their prospects already as a hitting squad. And I think they got a lot of guys who are going to stick there long-term already in their farm system and on the MLB roster. And I think an ace in Hagen Smith would have been the better pick. However, Condon's going to be a stud. If he turns out to be close to his potential, he's going to be like a Pete Alonso. And playing in that ballpark, that's easily a 40 homer, 100 plus RBIs every single year for a hitter for you. So I give it an A-. Number 4, the Oakland A's. The last first-round pick ever by the Oakland A's will be Nick Kurtz.
It's an A. I love this pick, man. I know we had some arguments on the group chat yesterday before the draft, but this guy gives me Jason Giambi vibes. And there's a particular trait that the A's go after for their future superstars, and he fits the build, unlike Caglione. Nick Kurtz is not only scary looking, but he walked 189 times at Wake Forest. They've been needing a 3-hitter who reminds them of Matt Olson. I'm not saying that he's going to be Matt Olson. The comps are closer to Rizzo, right? But I'm excited either way because obviously Ryan Noda's not getting the job done, and you don't pick top 5 very often in this kind of lottery system. So I'm happy they got a guy they know is going to mash in the major leagues no matter where he plays, right?
Oh,
let's hear it.
Hager got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Oh, baby.
I got to text him. I got to text him real quick. We can pause this for a second.
Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about it. What an awesome fit there. I know they've already drafted a high school pitcher in this draft. I believe in the competitive balance, but to go into a system with Jared Jones and Paul Skeens, you got to be super excited if you're Matt Hager, right? The first Santa Barbara guy off the board.
Haha, that's so awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let me pause this for a second. I'm gonna go tell my parents.
Yeah, I got you.
We're talking about Nick Kurtz, right? That's where we're at.
Yes, yeah, and I had a monologue on Matt Hager too.
But yeah, let me. I guess we'll hit on that real quick. Just shout out to Matt. I'm pretty sure he's one of the dudes that has listened to the podcast at some point in his life too. So that's something that's just awesome to see and hear that he's just got drafted to the MLB. I'm kind of speechless for that. I thought about it for a little while where he's going to go, all this stuff. But see him go to Pittsburgh is cool. They've developed so many pitchers. Obviously have, Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Quinn Priester, Mitch Keller, like all these guys that they've developed in their system. And hopefully he can be the next one of those guys, which is awesome to see. Regardless, the number 4 pick was Nick Kurtz. I think if you were to have the ability to trade a pick, I think this would have been a spot where the A's traded their pick and move back to say maybe get a guy like I won't say who because it kind of give me away on who I like in this draft. But I think this is a spot that you could have moved down if was possible. Regardless, I give it a B. I think Kurtz is a great prospect. I think he's a good hitter. I think he's got the discipline part down as well too. The walks, I think he led the country in walks of 78 or something like that. The power's there. He's a stud. Just not my ideal guy when I was looking at the draft this year. Number 5, the Chicago White Sox select Hagen Smith.
I'm also going to give this one an A. It's another perfect fit, it seems like. A lefty with 17 Ks per nine going to the White Sox, who love developing these kind of guys. He's only 20, despite being a junior in college, and doesn't need to be rushed anytime soon. So a former Tommy John guy can get a real development system here, not get rushed up.
Hagen Smith was one of my favorite prospects in this draft class. I give this pick an A plus. This is, I think, the best pitcher in the draft class. He's a guy, big lefty, kind of reminds me. He's not close to it, but Randy Johnson in a way where he's got that big, huge demeanor. And I think Garrett Crochet is actually a perfect comp for him as well too, where it's a hard throwing lefty with some devastating stuff. Obviously, he's not going to pitch with Garrett Crochet because I assume that they'll move him within a couple of weeks. But definitely the ace of this next chapter for the Chicago White Sox. And I think this was the perfect pick for getting a guy who's going to be in your starting rotation probably by the beginning of 2026, I'd say. Number 6, the Kansas City Royals select perhaps the most exciting draft prospect, Jack Caglianone.
Yeah, I feel like this has to be an A plus because he probably has the highest ceiling in the class. And I don't know if he's ever going to pitch in the bigs. They were arguing about that on the broadcast, but you might as well try. I don't think he's quite Bryce Harper, but he's been 1, 2, or 3 on my board for the last 2 years. And I definitely don't think he's Brendan McKay. That's for sure.
Yeah, Caglianone's not a guy who I think is going to pitch in the big leagues. I've talked about it a few times with you specifically, but just his stuff is he throws hard, but that's about it. I don't really think he projects well in that way. The bat is really what you're drafting for here, and I think Kansas City got a good guy. I think he's going to underwhelm as a prospect because I think everybody wants him to be a two-way guy, and when he ends up being a hitter, it's going to seem underwhelming. However, I think the bat is still going to be good enough, so I give it a B+. Number 7, J.J. Weatherholt goes to the St. Louis Cardinals.
I have a B+. I don't hate Weatherholt. He does a lot of the same things that Travis Bazana can do here, but he was hurt this year, and I didn't really get to watch him, so I had him at number 10 on my board and a future second baseman, not a shortstop. It just seems like an odd fit, but we all know that's not the end-all, be-all with the MLB draft. We just got to wait and see. More of a utility guy.
Yeah, I like Weatherholt. I think he's there's a reason why he was, partially projected 1 for a little bit. He's an exciting prospect. He's a guy that St. Louis is going to be able to get for somewhat cheap. And he's got potential in pretty much every single aspect of the game, whether it's fielding, hitting, speed, defense, whatever it is. He's a good, well-rounded guy. So I give it an A. I think it's a top 5 player in this draft class. Number 8, the Angels select Christian Moore out of Tennessee.
I also love this one, man. B+ again. The fit is crazy because if you had to pick one guy who was going to be the fastest up to the bigs, I would pick Christian Moore. And of course he ends up here with the Angels. He was unbelievable at Tennessee. Only Todd Helton put up better numbers there. And he might be a DH, but hey, if he puts in serious work with Ron Washington, anything is possible.
Yeah, Christian Moore has been one of my favorite players in this draft class. I've said it numerous times. I thought he was going to go number 7 when I did a mock draft 3 weeks ago. One of my favorite players in the draft class. I think he's going to be a top 3 to 4 player when it's all said and done. I give it an A+, and fuck it, he might be on the team post All-Star break. That's just how the Angels go. Number 9, the Pittsburgh Pirates select Connor Griffin.
I'm giving this one an A. I think Connor Griffin is the most interesting prospect in the class because he's 6'4" and has ridiculous speed, ridiculous athlete. It's a clean slate. I've heard people say you could turn him into Tatis if you work on the power. If you work on the center field ability, you could turn him into Buxton. If you leave him at shortstop, he could be one of those aliens that we have playing there, from Ellie to Correa to O'Neal Cruz on the Pirates. Anything is possible with this guy.
Yeah, it's very intriguing prospect because there is no real direction with Connor Griffin yet. It's just, those high school guys, you kind of just wait and see and hope, they don't swing and miss 40% of the time. Connor Griffin looks like a good prospect, though. He is not my favorite high schooler in the draft. I think Bryce Rainier is probably my favorite one. I'll talk maybe a bit more about him in a little bit, but still a solid pick. You just never really know. But I think the Pirates were in a decent spot where they could go ahead and take a high school shortstop and not be forced to take a college pitcher. Well, I guess they did later on, but they didn't have to take a college guy right off the bat. So I give it a B. Number 10, interesting pick here. The Washington Nationals select Seaver King.
I'm also going to give it a B plus because I have a very similar feeling with Washington's draft to Oakland's draft. They understand what they're good at developing, so they're going to stick to their strengths. Seaver King might not jump out to you athletically, but this is exactly what Washington needs. It's a sure-handed shortstop. He's going to get up to the big leagues at some point, and the underslot helped them get Caleb Lomavita after. So I think this is an awesome draft for Washington.
Yeah, I am just not in love with Seaver King as a prospect. I think it's the biggest tough part here. I think if you're drafting top 10, you can't take a guy who's undersized unless this guy is like a ridiculous prospect like Bazana is. Seaver King just isn't that. He says his like inspiration is Mookie Betts, and I think that's a great inspiration, but you're looking at a guy who is really like, it's just so tough to become a player like Mookie Betts who doesn't hit the ball, a ridiculously hard, like high exit velo, isn't the crazy fastest, but is somehow one of the best players in the league. I just think you're asking a lot for Seaver King. I know they're not saying, hey, turn into Mookie Betts or something like that. I just don't love the prospect as a whole. So I give it a C plus. I think they could have gone somewhere better. And we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
We're talking about our favorite picks outside of the top 10, Skyler. I have two. I'll let you go first, though, for yours.
All right. I also have two. How could you not love Vance Honeycutt to Baltimore? Of course, we got to start there. From UNC at 22, he's got so much power already. I'm sure Baltimore feels comfortable trading an outfielder at the deadline this year. He's so ready. And then one other guy I want to shout out, Ryan Sloan, the high school righty from Illinois, going to the Mariners at 55. It sounds like Seattle was able to underslot Gerangelo in the first round, so they're going to steal this guy, Ryan Sloan, away from Wake Forest. He was ranked in the top 20 and fell all the way here.
Another UCSB guy just got taken, Aaron Parker, who is our catcher. Short guys, like probably like 5'9", 5'8".
Wow.
But hits absolute tanks. Is going to the Toronto Blue Jays at the end of the 6th round. My two favorite picks outside of the top 10, I felt pretty basic choosing these guys because they're not far outside of the top 10. I went with the number 12 pick, first off, Braden Montgomery, going to the Boston Red Sox. This prospect is a top, 6 or 7 prospect in this draft class. It's just the fact that he was hurt that kind of helped him to go outside of that. However, I think Boston's a perfect team for Braden Montgomery. You can throw him in left if the injury doesn't work out the best. You could throw him in center. Probably not, actually, because Jaron Durant's playing center. So just put him in left in a couple of years, and I think he'll be fine over there. The power is off the charts, switch hitter. He can do everything at the plate for you. And I think he's got the ability to be a all-star type level player when it's all said and done. My next favorite pick outside of the top 10 is the 11th pick, Bryce Rainier, going to Detroit. I think this was the best high school player within the draft. There's a reason why there's only one taken in the first top 10, and that was Connor Griffin at 9. Bryce Rainier, I think, is the best high school player, though. I think he's the most complete. I think he's more sure of a bat than Connor Griffin as well, too. Lands in Detroit, who's got the ability to kind of wait on a high school shortstop as well, too, to become the franchise player. I think not going to be in this exact wave of guys in Detroit, but definitely something that, hey, Colt Keith, Riley Green, Chase Young, these guys are in years 4 through 6 of their arbitration. We just called up a 22, 23-year-old Bryce Rainier to go play shortstop for our team and take over for probably not Javi Baez. I assume he'll be gone by then, but someone else at that point. I think that works out pretty well.
Definitely something we could look back on in a couple of years. Be like, why did all these high school guys fall? They're always good.
Mm-hmm. So. Because the one that the A's draft will always end up being bad is what we've learned. Moving on, though, we have college football coming out in 15 minutes. I don't think we might be done by then. Who knows? But we have to do our Dynasty school draft here for the best teams to use in college football 25 if you're doing the Dynasty mode. Let me go ahead and pull up a coin flipper. That way we
I
can...
say you won the last one. If you want the number one pick, you can have it.
Okay, I'll take the number one pick then. I have 16 schools on my big board, so I'll be able to use all the guys or all the teams, I guess. And I was talking about this one yesterday and how I think it'll be fun to do. So my first overall pick is going to be Hawaii.
Awesome.
You get the Islander pipeline type dude. You build up your offensive line, defensive line. You have a ton of good prospects coming out of there all the time, and I think it'd be a fun, school to make a powerhouse. Who's your first and second pick, Skyler?
Well, I feel like with my first pick, I'm going to have to take the one that everyone's going to do, Kennesaw State. I think they deserve to be a first-round pick. It's the newest FBS school. They're very shitty at football. It's the Iowa of the South. Number 2, let's see here. I'm obviously doing Boise State myself, but I won't draft them here because I know not everyone feels the same about them. Let's go with a different conference. How about Indiana? They're in the brand new Big Ten, and they haven't won a bowl game in 10 plus years. That seems like the cool challenge that most people would be up for.
Yeah. I have a couple schools that I'm going to take here. I'm happy you didn't take them so I can take them back to back. I'm going with the Armed Forces, man. I'm taking Navy, number 1, and I'm taking Army, number 2. I think just building up a school like that would be really cool. And you can, there's all these funny little joke things on Twitter and whatnot where you're talking about your requirements for your school and how you got to be locked in all the time. And it's just all this fake stuff. But I think I can see myself being locked into one of those rebuilds there.
Absolutely. Oh boy. I'm going to take the team that I actually told you about yesterday, the USF Bulls. They have a South Florida pipeline, sophomore quarterback, Bynum Brown, ridiculous speed. So they'd be really fun if you're trying to win now too. And the next pick, let's go with another team in the South. How about the ECU Pirates? They have really cool purple jerseys and they haven't been good at football ever. Maybe CJ2K the last time.
Getting into where the jerseys and the fields matter. And speaking of the fields matter, I'm taking Coastal Carolina as my number 4th overall pick, which sets me up to start the back end of our draft. Oh, man, we talked about it. We talked about this school a little bit. We talked about this conference. I'm taking Eastern Michigan as my number 5 school. You got to take someone from the MAC at some point. It's going to be crazy. And I think the Max Crosby Eastern Michigan team would be fire.
All right. I'm going to go with another team for the extracurriculars here, the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. It's because they have a hilarious mascot. It's the giant red blob guy. And every time you score or turn the ball over or something, that guy's going to flash up and it's going to make things way more interesting. And my next pick, I feel like I need another Power 4 school. So let's go with Washington State. Of the Pac-12, I would say I would combine it with Oregon State, but the rumor is that Oregon State's new stadium isn't going to be in the game at launch. So Washington State will be that honorary Pac-12 team that are kind of an independent, kind of a Mountain West. What are they going to do? That'd be a cool story.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on to it would be my last 3 picks. So it'll get to my last pick the next round or next time that I go around. But I'm going to stick on the term of Armed Forces, and I'm going with the Air Force. I think you can make a fun, air raid, Air Force, whatever it is, and do that, and that'd be pretty fun. And then since we're from the Bay Area, I think this one would be a pretty cool one considering the school has had some good years, but starting to get a bit better. San Jose State, I think would be fun, the Spartans.
San Jose's on the board because their entire team hit the portal. Their coach left for Troy, I think. So that'd probably be a disaster. I have 1 or 2 left.
You have These are your last two picks.
Okay. This one's going to be tough, but with my next pick, I am going to have to go with Temple. It's a Philly pipeline, and they're stuck at Lincoln Financial with no campus lifestyle. So that'd be really difficult to try to recruit guys there. Plus, you get to play at the Phillies, not the Phillies, geez, the Eagles Stadium. Yeah. And with the last pick, I'm going to go with my honorary MAC team, Northern Illinois, the Huskies. I always wanted to do them after watching Jordan Lynch play around 2014, the last game, because he ran people over. He's kind of like the Tebow of the MAC.
Solid. My last team, and this is if you just want to make it hell, because no one fucking likes this team. I'm going with Iowa. I think it's a funny rebuild, and you can try to stay tradition where you don't have an offense and just make the best defense in the country and try to get by with that. Or you could eventually try to, build up an offense to do that. Plus, you're playing a good conference, good teams. It's going to be a good challenge. And so that concludes our, what do you call it, rosters, I guess, our draft. We'll go over our squads real quick here. Yeah. Starting with Skyler's. Kennesaw State is, the golden child here in this scenario. Then you went to Indiana with the conference. Or was it Indiana State? Is Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Okay. South Florida was your next one, the USF Bulls. Eastern Carolina, the Pirates, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's their mascot. The Western Kentucky Red Blobs. I forget what their actual mascot is. The Hilltopper, that's what it is. The Washington State Cougars, we know that one. Temple from Philly, and Northern Illinois, which is where Jimmy Garoppolo went to school, I want to say, right?
I think he was Southern Illinois, actually.
Let me check, actually. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Because I want to say he was Division II.
College. He was Eastern Illinois. Oh my Jesus. God.
I know David Johnson was a Husky, though, the old Cardinals running back.
Gotcha. That's NIU, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I know you're talking about that. For my squad, I went with Hawaii first, then went to Navy, Army, Coastal Carolina, Eastern Michigan, went back to the Air Force, San Jose State, and then finished off with the Hawkeyes in Iowa. Moving on to the second half. The draft day notables part 2, kind of something we wanted to go over. I guess we've been going over them as they go on. I'm not going to say that we know, all these prospects or anything like that. So I think we're kind of good on there. And then the Home Run Derby is tonight, Skyler. We can go over the participants if you want there.
Sure. The last time we talked about the Home Run Derby, we didn't really know everyone who's going to be there, but now we do. Pete Alonso, guy trying to defend a title. He's got a year gap, but we all know he can do it. Gunnar Henderson, the youngster power sensation. Marcell Ozuna, another guy who has kind of a power resurgence to his career now. Bobby Witt Jr., one of the most exciting 5-tool players in the game. Adolis Garcia, looking for revenge. I believe he lost to Julio last year in the Derby, so he for surely wants to get out of the first round. Alec Boehm, another guy, massive, mostly doubles hitter, but this year he's kind of taken that next step to become a complete hitter. J-Ram, always exciting to see J-Ram hit no matter what he's doing. And Teoscar Hernandez, kind of one of the saviors for the Dodgers right now. They're struggling a little bit, but hey, I still like Pete Alonso, and I'm sure Gunnar Henderson is going to be right behind him in excitement level. Unfortunately, I'm going to be having to work tonight and miss it, but I'm going to record it and watch it for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be some fun matchups in there. We'll talk probably a little bit more about that in a second once we get to our bets, which we're doing right now. And it was a good last week for us. We went 2 for 3. My layup was Spain winning in the Euro finals. That obviously happened, as I talked about in the opener. Skyler had the Mets over Colorado on Friday. That did happen. The Mets outburst continued there. This week, I have the hometown guy, Adolis Garcia, advancing to the second round as my layup. I didn't want to go too bold there, and I felt like that was a good, probably around even odds guy to go with.
Yeah. I'm also going with some festivities here. This time, the All-Star game. Vladdy Jr., he's not in the Home Run Derby, but he will be starting in the game tomorrow. I'm going to have him getting one hit in the All-Star game. He's not going to face Skeens unless Skeens gets lit up in the first inning, which I don't think is going to happen. So he usually steps up for the big moments, especially with the trade rumors. I expect him to have a pretty big hit in this one.
Yeah. Last week, bold prediction, I had Pittsburgh and Baltimore first 5 money line on Thursday. That was the Paul Skeens start, so it was actually even there because Aaron Savali actually matched them through the first 5. But Baltimore sucked against the White Sox, the Cubs. So that is an L there. Skyler's bold prediction was Pete Alonso winning the Derby. That obviously has not happened yet, and so it will remain as his bold prediction going into this week. My bold prediction this week is a Gunnar Henderson versus Pete Alonso final. That's currently slotted at plus 750 according to Flift. I know their odds are sometimes locked down a little bit. So still a crazy kind of pick there. I assume that one's going to be wrong, but I think Gunnar Henderson could have a good performance just because he's so damn good. And Pete Alonso, we know he's going to try hard. So give me that as the final matchup.
I love it. Obviously, running it back with Pete Alonso, I found out the numbers today, plus 270 to win it. And I still think that that's okay. I was kind of surprised it wasn't worse odds after, we know his history in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. That's going to do it, though, for episode 201. Ended up good time here. It's 12:56 with the NCAA coming out in approximately 3 to 4 minutes. We got a friend drafted in this time period as well, too. It was a good episode. Early in the week, so if you're listening to this on Monday or Tuesday, sorry for posting early, or you're welcome, or I don't know exactly what to say there. But we'll see you guys next week, next Monday as well too for 202, because I will be flying out on next Tuesday. So we'll see you guys then.
All right, you have a nice trip, Kyle. Everyone else have a nice time playing college football. Yep. We'll be back for 202 next week.
Bye.